Hi guys, intrepid, war-weary viewers. How are you holding up? Well, I'm here. I've done 1 week. I'm at the halfway mark of my quarantine. And I must say, it's difficult not leaving the house at all. And I've just had my niece do a run and she bought me a bottle of brandy and Tim Tams. Bless her. We normally eat really healthy in this house, but you know what? I really needed a bottle of brandy and the Tim Tams. So she gets credit points in heaven. Now, you know, there's no other news, as we know, than what's going on. So in Australia, it's the same as everywhere else. We're handling it well in some ways and really badly in other ways. And one of those other ways was to let 2,400 people off a cruise ship and just wave them off. You know, what were they thinking? And now that's become a hotspot and on it goes, you know. But we don't have enough tests either. The US doesn't, the UK doesn't. Nowhere has enough actual tests. So we have no idea of real numbers, and neither do you. And I'm really a bit tired of hearing about the rich and famous and whether they've got it or whether they haven't, because they're getting tests and mere mortals simply aren't. You know, the rate is high when people are tested, but we're playing with numbers everywhere, you know. But let's see, onwards today. I wanted to have a look at the evangelicals who are sort of holding out and continuing to ignore the bans on church gatherings and so forth, who are still gathering in large numbers and ignoring, if they're ignoring that advice, they're ignoring all the advice. And you know what? I bet they think it's in New York and California and their flesh pot places, and this is what happens when you live a life of sin, you know. So they're really not getting it, and it won't be until they literally get it. Okay, so let's have a look at the evangelicals, and let's call it the Midwest in the center. Then we'll have a look at Florida, because I think Florida is the one that's going to bring Trump undone. So first of all, we're going to look at the evangelical belt. The virus. What lessons are coming up for the evangelicals who are fundamentalists? Let's not pussyfoot around here. Like, fundamentalist anything is a problem, isn't it? You know, there's nothing wrong with Christianity at its best, but fundamentalism is not good. Whether that's Islam, most Muslims live really lives dedicated to peace, and then there's the fundamentalists, and it's the same in Israel, and so it goes on. So let's see how the flat earthers are doing with this. The flat earthers. Haven't used these for a while. These are the Japaritse deck. So they're quite abstract. They're very beautiful, but quite abstract. So I'm going to use the Sybillas as clarifiers for this. So, allow me. They get the Hermit. Oh, they're in for a few challenges here. Few challenges. Okay, so in the middle they have the Hermit card. Now, if we were talking about New York or California or some of the other states, we'd be saying, oh, they're self-isolating, they're sheltering in place, and all these phrases that now just roll off our tongues. But they're not. But the Hermit here, to me, means they are insular from the knowledge And that is a really dangerous place to be. They are so not listening. They don't think it applies to them. Past thinking, the death card. Now, the death card is often death and renewal and so forth, but they see it, yes, they see it as part of what's been prophesied. They see it as an apocalyptic thing that will just wipe out those who have sinned. And who would that be? That would be those who aren't like them. They're seeing it as the external other, as we say in sociology. So, you know, people are often come into insular, almost tribal groups about their thinking and their values, and everyone else is the other, you know. So this is them thinking, all these people are going to die because they're sinful and because they're different and because they live these willfully filthy lives, you know, and we're going to be spared. We're going up in the rapture. They're seeing this in those terms. So stranger of fire, I mean, look at this image. Their belief system is going to be put to the torch. I don't think that's too extravagant to say. Not straight away, but it's going to be put to the torch. That is ultimately how they construe this message and how they handle it is going to affect them for the next generation too, in these really closed communities. The atmosphere is the devil. So it's like what I was saying, they think the devil is taking the form of wicked, licentious people who live in these other cities like San Francisco and New York. But the devil is actually ignorance, I'm sad to say. Their ignorance is actually the real evil, that they've been kept ignorant by their politicians, their GOP politicians in 90% of cases, if not 100, kept ignorant by gutting the education system, the ignorance that comes from only mixing with people who think like you. Every type of ignorance they are displaying, and there's a willful ignorance, even though this is affecting the whole world, it doesn't affect them. That's why when the fire starts, they are going to be so unprepared. Then they get two very female cards, the Queen of Tides or the Queen of Cups, my Princess Diana card, and the Empress. And I'm putting them together because they're both archetypal feminine cards. Now, I think a woman's going to emerge once the numbers start to take hold and multiply. This is the thing with separated communities. It takes longer for something like this to get there, but when it does, it goes through it faster and in a more total way. So a woman's going to emerge. They're going to get their Princess Diana out of this. And by that, I mean someone who's literally caring for the sick overall and explaining to them. This could be in 2 months' time, could be 3 months' time. I doubt it's any further away than that. Who's going to explain to them what they need to know, right? And so with the Empress too, this is fertile ground for them for the future. They are going to be so let down by the Yeti and by Pence and by their news outlets, etc., that this is going to rock the boat for them. I got a bit of an echo of this when I read with Marianne. So I'm sure you all found the duet I did with Marianne, and if you haven't, go to her channel. And there it is. We had a 3/4 of an hour session that was fabulous. We covered a lot of territory. But there was a hint of this then, that the younger ones are going to see this play out. They've got all their elders literally telling them it's all right, you're immune, you're protected by God, and you're protected by our belief system. Then they're going to feel the pandemic, and the young ones in particular are not going to be impressed. And there's a young woman, I think, coming through, or young women, plural, coming through. Now, one of the ways I think this virus is going to hit those communities is long-haul trucking. It's one of the industries that is still taking on people. It's expanding because goods have to be moved and people aren't flying as much and stuff. So long-haul truckers, and they're going to the outside world and back to these closed communities. And let me tell you, I'm sorry to break the news if this is a revelation to anyone out there, but they're the ones who use the brothels. You know, it's one of the great mysteries of life. The majority of sex workers will tell you that most of their clients are married men. And if you go to the health services and look at who has terminations of pregnancies, it's not teenage pregnancies. They're married women with children. Most women who have an abortion are married women with children because they know exactly what's ahead of them. And maybe they're pregnant 8 weeks after they've just had one, they've got a 2-year-old or whatever. So the majority of men in brothels are married men because single men are out on the town trying to score, you know. And it's the same with the whole abortion issue. The majority are married women with kids because the teenagers go, I'm going to keep my baby. It'll be fine. He loves me. Right? So let me just put those two myths to rest right now. Okay? Now, what are we moving on to? That was the evangelicals. They're going to have their own particular apocalypse. Florida. I don't have a good feeling about Florida. Please, if you live in Florida, shout out to Johnny, be ultra careful. Florida is so behind the 8 ball on this. The infection rate in Florida is going to shock everybody. I think it could even put New York in the shade once it hits. I'm sorry to break the news, but really, Florida. And they have a large elderly population. So you've got the young ones mixing up and partying on the beach like we have at Bondi Beach. Oh, my word. They've now closed all the beaches. But Australia, so preschools and kindergartens and childcare are still open. We've closed every restaurant, every cafe, every hotel, but let's send the 2-year-olds to play together. What the? Can you believe that? Can you believe it? Now, I know frontline care workers need childcare, but each major employer, whether that's police, fire brigade, health workers, should be doing dedicated childcare centres set up really cleverly and well with little separated spaces, everyone in masks. Employ the workers from the normal childcare centres that you've had to shut down because you're responsible, and pay them a lot of money to work on a 24-hour shift system. The other thing in terms of industrial change that I'd like to see, I think every healthcare worker, down to hospital cleaners and janitors, anyone who's working in that system should be tax-free for life. For their working life, they should be tax-free. They're going out there every day while we're sitting at home with the door closed and eating Tim Tams, right? Tax-free. Okay. Now, let's see what's happening with Florida. Florida. Look, ladies and gentlemen, LGBTQI, I might have been steering the cards. I've just described what I think is going to happen as an observer in Florida, but you know what? Here it is, the Two of Fire. So on the one hand, that's the Two of Wands and making a plan. The fire's coming over the mountain and they're making a plan. But this figure has one foot out going, oh my God, I wouldn't be surprised if DeSantis loses his job over this. I think it's going to be so sudden and so huge in Florida, they're not going to be able to contain it. It's like a wildfire coming at them. And I think heads are going to roll. And the other reason I think heads are going to roll is suddenly the public that's been, I'm sure in Florida, like everywhere else, you've got people who are worried their state government isn't doing enough, and those who don't care, don't know, brush it aside, right? There's that mix of people. But this is going to be an out, you know, drag them out, last man standing battle. And I don't think DeSantis is going to be standing at the end of it. I actually don't, because the Judgment card is right next to this, right? Need I say more? And the Fool. And although there's many permutations to the Fool card, in this case, it's at its most basic meaning, which is how stupid have the authorities been in Florida? Just how stupid and irresponsible have they been? They're on the high wire and they have no net, meaning not enough masks, not enough gowns, not enough anything, certainly not enough respirators, but they haven't got anything really to really counteract the huge ongoing impact that is going to hit Florida. Now, I'm just going to have a quick look at Russia and North Korea. Now, one of the things, there's usually two things that bring down dictators. And it's not the collapse of money or being treated really badly. It's an accumulated thing. Either it spills over into revolution, where people start to think for themselves and they revolt against the oppressive power, or pandemics, right? Because it shows how an authoritarian regime that promises you, if nothing else, we'll squash every interesting creative aspect of your life, but you know what? We're a strong state and we are stronger than the perceived enemy, right? It's the same with Russia. It's the same as North Korea. And the reasons they've got low numbers is because they are A, not testing, and B, lying. So I think let's have a look at North Korea first and then Russia. I've had a feeling that Putin's only got 2 years or less left anyway. I've been saying that for about a year. So let's do North Korea. Kim Jong-un is throwing his toys out of the playpen and no one's taking any notice. You know, have you seen this, viewers? He's launched missiles and jumped up and down and everyone's going, are you for real? We've got this stuff going on. So North Korea and Kim Jong-un. North Korea and Kim Jong-un. Ace of Pentacles. Oh, they got the Gladiator too. He got the Magician. Four of Swords. Look, I haven't even needed the clarifiers today. I'm pleased with how these cards are performing. I think they're giving a really good overview. Now, in this deck, Gardens are Pentacles. Now, the Ace of Pentacles could be that there's plenty of money going on, but this is a pariah state. It doesn't have plenty of money at all. So you'd have to go to my other definition of the Ace of Pentacles, which is fool's gold. The illusion that all authoritarian states do, which is you spend in two areas. One, you spend on your corrupt officials to be corrupt judges and stuff so you can be the top dog of the pile, and you spend on the military so you can roll out, just as Donald Trump was mesmerized, by the French, but that's nothing compared with the Russian army in full flight, or the North Korean army, where I think they've got 1 million soldiers actively and then millions more because it's the only place you can get a feed. So, fool's gold. And I'd go as far as to say the North Korean people, they've been cowed a great deal by this regime of Kim Jong-un and his father and grandfather, but I think they're sick of burying the dead. And when they're going to be burying a lot of dead, right? I think it could bode very well. I think he's going to be challenged from within. I think this is his generals and so on. He gets the Magician card, meaning he still has personally an amazing ability to transform. This gladiator thing, them going for him, but who's going to win? The Magician card says to me, someone's going to come forward out of the generals and challenge him, and he's going to squash that, and maybe the next one after him and the next one after him. But this is going to be very compressed because we're in a very accelerated universe as we speak. So what might have taken place over 25 years could take place in a year or two. And I don't think the magic's going to hold. It's also magic in the sense of, like all the major arcana cards, it goes from the base to the most exalted. This is bad juju, really bad juju. Four of Swords, I think it's the big nine-eyes for Kim Jong-un. Not next week, but I don't think it's that long. I don't think it's that long. And I've got a similar vibe for Putin. But let's have a look. I'll remind viewers, I was surprised to find out that the Russian economy is only the same size as Sweden. Look how Sweden handles its economy. Look how Russia handles its economy. And Sweden doesn't spend 80% of its income on feeding corrupt officials and the military, do they? No. But Russia does, and I think you'd have to think the Russians are getting sick of it. Yes. Then we will have a look here. Russia, and then I'll finish with Trump, who's currently living in Disneyland. Really? Russia. Yes, oh, the Star oh, this is chess game, that's for sure. Page of Cups, Milan. And the Empress Mother Russia herself. Interesting. Okay, so this is the Page of Pentacles. In a way, I think this is young people in Russia watching this all unfold. I'm sure they're feeling invincible too, poo-pooing it as a disease of the West or whatever propaganda is presented on a daily basis on Russian television. It's probably similar to the Evangelicals, but I'd like to say I'm reminded of a quote by Mark Twain when I think of the Evangelicals, just going back to them for a minute. And Mark Twain said, "It's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled." And you know what? I think he was right. So this is the Russian version of that. I don't think the young people are going to be as easily fooled as their parents and grandparents were. Fool's the wrong word, that's harsh. You know, a lot of people objected to the Russian state and knew just how mad and bad it was. So please don't write to me saying that, of course. There were very brave people who stood up to it at every stage. But what I'm talking about is the national narrative. There is inspiration and hope for Russia. Yeah. They've got to engage with the chess game. Are they prepared to let the oligarchs take everything for the next 2 generations or not? The Page of Cups, Jester of Tides. I'm going to do a clarifier on this one. Page of Cups. There's a lot of Neptune energy around this card, but also generally in the skies at the moment. And Neptune is deception and self-deception and every sort of deception and veil. An outcome, Mother Russia being liberated. Being liberated. It's interesting. So I'm going to do a couple of clarifiers on Russia. I haven't used these for ages, the Sybillas. Let's see what the Sybillas say about Russia. What do Sybillas say about Russia? And then we'll get on to the extraordinary behaviour of the Yeti. Russia. Wow. Wow. That is extraordinary. Okay, so what we have over the star card, I just said hope and inspiration, gets the hope card. Kind of cute. The chess game gets the death card. This is, like the gladiator card before, a game to the death, in the sense death is also renewal. Hello, death and renewal. So this chess game is about the very letting go of the old corrupt state and coming into the new state. There's an innocence with the Page of Cups. It's quite beautiful. And this is called the sweet card. Oh, sweet. So it's definitely young people at the helm. How cute is that? They make good clarifiers, the Sybilla. I must remember that. Use them a bit more. Okay, so I'm going to put these back in the deck and we're going to look at what has the Yeti been up to. Have you seen that ad? The White House is suing somebody who made this ad. All it is Trump saying absolute rubbish on the 25th of February, rubbish and lies on the 1st of March, or whatever it is. It just gives the dates and the untruth he sprouted. Oh my God. And then you've got Pence and Mnuchin that are sort of apprentice liars to the president, you know. Really, these disgusting people. So let's have a look. We're only going out a week here because a week's a long time in politics. They said that, 50 years ago. Well, now a day's a long time in politics, isn't it? So this is Trump right now in the next week. What's going to happen? As we see out March. And don't you love it? Everyone's going to be back at church at Easter and back at work. Now, I'd love someone to ask him, can you please explain the Easter story to us, Mr. President? He wouldn't have a clue what it was about. And it's all about him as always. Apparently, the media and the Dems are just doing this. They're tanking the economy just to set back his campaign. Now, the world is in lockdown. The world. This hasn't been seen, even including the Second World War, which had all these other things going on. Since the Second World War, there has been nothing like the empty streets of Paris and Madrid and Rome and everywhere. And he thinks it's about him. It's a disease. Okay. This could be interesting. So Trump in the next one. Oh, bugger, he gets the strength card. Hate that. Oh, that's better. Oh, shouldn't say that. I should operate on a higher level. I'll do my best, intrepid viewers, to lift myself. No, well, no. Okay, so there's a couple of things I'd say about this first off. I'm glad I used this deck because it has a different sort of tangent. The traditional strength card in the Rider-Waite decks and most related decks, they show a woman, there's a woman, taming a lion. And the idea is it's taming the beast. And if I was using my Rider-Waite's and got this card, I'd be saying there's some woman who's managing to keep a lid on him, or he'd be even worse. God, the mind boggles. And that might be the case. And it could be Ivanka. But look, in this deck, the Japaridze, note the downward motion. She's falling with the lion. And I think this might be Ivanka. Okay. So he's got this lion strength, but is, you know, dopey as. And now the Hanged Man is also interesting. And in this deck, it's called the Drowned. See that downward motion again? He is drowning, right? He's using up the last of his strength, and he's literally drowning in misinformation and impotent rage and confusion, all of it. He is drowning in it. Six of Swords, Five of Swords. Any readers watching will go, oh, well then. Moving away. It could be one or the other. It could be him being dragged off the dais and actually put with an ankle bracelet in the Oval Office. They might have to keep him away from the microphone. That could be one interpretation. Ooh. Or people moving away from him. Five of Swords, ruthlessness in the extreme, winning at any cost. He, at the end of this week, you may be astonished, viewers, to know he still won't get it. Now, so he is a drowning man. Okay. Now, Mar-a-Lago. Now, if what I think is going to happen with Florida is going to happen, maybe Mar-a-Lago should be opened as an emergency hospital. I read somewhere just today an interesting description that Trump is a weak, strong man. So he thinks of himself as a strong man. He operates in that individualistic, egotistical, just get people on side with simple, trite, rubbish stuff, all the hallmarks of a strong man, but he's actually a weak, strong man. And that's the case. It's the last thing you want when you've got a pandemic is a weak, strong man. He's just strong enough to stop everyone else getting on with it. But I think other people are coping magnificently. Full marks to all those governors who are stepping up and people who are helping out. And this is a challenge globally. And it's like, I don't know about America, but the rest of us, we're starting to feel like suddenly we've got things in common with people in China and Italy, this whole thing of social isolation and stuff, that there is a feeling that we are global citizens And we need to ride this out together, and we need to support science, because one of the messages that's coming through cosmically on all this is a lot of these politicians have taken us back to the Middle Ages in terms of knowledge, just pure scientific knowledge, health knowledge. We've stopped underfunding all our scientific research institutions in Australia that used to lead the world. We invented the cochlear ear implant and all sorts of amazing things, and they've been starved of funds, you know. And we've done the same thing on a smaller scale. The barrier reef, the greatest living reef in the world, right? Let's build a coal mine that sends all its tailings straight onto the reef. Awesome. But let's do it better still with a totally corrupt Indian company that has been hauled up before the courts in India for corruption. How bad does it have to be? And our government wants to go ahead and dig another coal mine called the Adani mine. Look it up, it's a global thing. The Adani mine, which would be the biggest coal mine ever in Australia, just as everyone's moving away from fossil fuels. The craziness doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. So, delicious to be back with you guys. I'll be back very soon. Okay, love you. Mwah, mwah. I'll see you soon.